Okay, this will be take 2. I was asked to review a video someone put up. I was asked to look at from the 11-minute mark to the 12-minute mark. I actually started at the 10-minute and 36-second mark, and I went longer than that. I'm amazed. Anyway, the person said, this guy said the government is going to fake an ice age. Is this true? The guy will give you enough ammunition to make videos for days. Not really, actually. Because this is a repeat. Not sure if he's serious. Roughly at those time periods. JonXArmy. FYI, here are my notes. Meme versus data. It's not likely for someone to, or possible for someone, especially the bumbling feds, for them being able to create any kind of change. I'm sorry, but the reason the planet has a problem with us, stop calling it global warming. We've polluted the planet, and it's messed with its ability to regulate temperature. And it could escalate or not. It probably will, because that's how things seem to happen on this planet. They get really bad, and then they go back to normal by effectively washing us out of its hair. But the point is, this has been building up since the Industrial Revolution, but it roughly matches our carbon footprint output. But it could be something else related to it, too. It's probably the carbon. But anyway, the initial report that keeps getting repeated every few years, from 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and 1 year ago, is a mathematical model based on solar magnetic field behavior. That's it. It's an attempt at modeling the sun's magnetic field and creating a mathematical model for it to simplify it down and then compare that to actual data to see if it works. And that's it. There's no follow-up. This was more than 5 years ago, most likely. I have Time magazine covered it. Fake Time cover Ice Age. What else? There's a bunch of it in here. The Guardian covered it. Climate Consensus, 97%, 2018, January 9th. The imminent mini ice age myth is back, and it's still wrong because it keeps getting repeated every few years. Here we go. Oh yeah, Professor Valentina Zarkova. Bad journalism run amok. New ice age. Again and again and again. This person came up with a mathematical model just to predict solar magnetic field and then test it. And that's when it ended. The person is not a climatologist and may not be an expert in sun or stars or anything. This is a mathematician. And the thing is, when I tried to look up any more information about it, I just find this person at a particular point, like 5 years ago, just simply stopped being an academic and stopped learning anymore or doing anything other than being a climate change denialist or a climate change alarmist. I mean, after a while, you complain, NASA's trying to scare us with global warming. I'm trying to scare you with global cooling. At that point, it's horseshoe effect. I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, I am criticizing that. That's a mathematician probably coming up with a failed mathematical model. It didn't match what the sun did. But maybe it did, okay. But I'd like to see a follow-up from the same person. No follow-up. What I see is this person constantly being trotted out, including on television. You're feeding a narcissist, it sounds like. But anyway, it's not likely or possible for us to be faking any of it or messing with it. So let's just talk about the modeling of it. The sun's behavior happens in more than light frequencies. It happens in infrared and ultraviolet. Now, what is the main component that heats the planet from the sun? Heat. Okay, can we actually measure independently the heat coming from the sun? Now, in the past, we couldn't measure it except by putting observatories above the cloud layer at high altitude. Now we can do it in space, and immediately flat earthers are going to scream that we can't really do that because they can't. They have to put up a wall. Oh my God, I'm dramatic. But no, really, we can measure it, and how much variation happens. Now, sunspot activity changes over an 11-year cycle. It's a very regular cycle. That's what we're calling it, an 11-year cycle. What's the percentage of change in heat output, the maximum we've seen varying over an 11-year period of time? Now remember, we've been observing sunspot activity for a long time, because you can put a filter on a lens and use the telescope to make it bigger looking, but not make it brighter. If you want to, you can keep limiting it. And you can get a very good idea of how many sunspots are on the sun, because we just count the dots, right? And that's what they're called, sunspots. And they're caused by a specific thing, okay? But measuring how much heat energy comes off the sun, not estimating it, but actually measuring it directly, not using computer models, but recording what really is happening. Since the space age, which 1950s forward, let's just use that as a reference, we've been able to go up to high altitude with all sorts of equipment, including helium balloons or whatever. But what is the variation? 1950s, okay, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Okay, we've had 5 cycles to work with or so, right? We need 3 at least. The variation is 1 watt out of 1,300 and some. So let's say 1,300 watts of energy. And it changes over an 11-year period of time, actual dynamic change of 1 stinking watt. Less energy than your flashlight. Literally. Over a 1 square meter area. 1 part in 1,300, let's say. Go get a dime and get 1,300 of them. Put the dime on, come back, take it off, see if anybody notices it. How much carbon dioxide is in their atmosphere? Oh, it's a tiny amount. Yeah, what's the amount? It's not 1 part in 1,000. It's 1 part in a couple of hundred. And have we affected it by a percentage point? Are we having more of an effect on something that you can test changes our behavior on this planet? Now, this is something that the Industrial Revolution forward we've built up on this planet. We've polluted this planet for a very long period of time. The sun changes every 11-year cycle, and it doesn't change more than 1 part in about 1,000. Or 0.1%. We have, over a very long period of time, altered the atmosphere's, a very small amount of the atmosphere's gas component by enough of a change that we're actually seeing real temperature changes. And it's not over a short period of time. And in the original file version of this, it was done by the oil companies noticing they were screwing up the planet, and then they buried it. They suppressed that information, not the government. Okay, let's get this straightened out. But now we have the opposite day alarmists who talk about global cooling. Originally, people thought this would cause global cooling because the scientists made a mistake and they were wrong. We found out that we were seeing global heating. We also saw that it wasn't consistent. So we had to look for lots and lots of data and just shut up for a while. That's not how alarmists and politicians talk, yes. And after this much time, since 70s, 80s, 90s, okay, we've had almost the same time period. We've been studying it for about the same period of time with good data, like going up in space and comparing. We've been able to determine as a species, and it is consistent, there's a consensus among scientists, yeah, we have actually damaged the environment enough that it is starting to go into whiplash effect, and we're going to be the whip. And some of them talk about trying to fix it. It is my contention not to throw my hands up, that we can't fix it by actively changing anything other than not putting out more pollution. Stop calling it global warming and talk about carbon credits and bring in Al Gore, who I really just want to shut up. Just stop putting pollution into the damned atmosphere and shut up about what you think it's going to do. Just stop talking about, oh, it's going to affect jobs. Shut up. Find a way to reduce the amount of crap we put into the environment and stop talking about the politics. I don't care if you lose your job. I don't currently have one right now, but I'm a computer geek, so it doesn't really get affected that way. I don't care about you. I care about not dying. But it's not going to happen in my lifespan or yours. So we can just give a damn, right? Or not. I mean, we don't have, it's not like we no, we really don't have a choice, because we're talking about making sure our species and the planet survives. Actually, no. This planet has gone through this before. The planet will just kill off a bunch of crap and reset. So throw your hands up and walk away from that. Okay? Have I nutshelled this? So let's get to the video I'm supposed to review. First assertion. He saw no sunspots for many years, or there were no sunspots for many days, or whatever. So then he says, we, very, very generalized, quit watching the sun. And then we are told that the sun low activity is bad by NASA. And then on the screen he's reading a Daily Star tabloid claiming NASA said the sun's going dim when it said nothing of the sort. He's not even trying to double check his sources, so he's a garbage data source because he's repeating a garbage data source. Again, it's some mathematical model talking about it, and some lady now walking around basically lying to people, in my opinion. I'll do a full review of her work, but honestly, it was really just an equation. But let's talk about something even simpler. Let's just get his video done. He says, I don't believe NASA, and they chemtrail, and they're going to fake an ice age. For some reason he rips that out. And again, he's still basing this on reading some tabloid, creating a straw man, saying NASA said something or did something, when in fact it's some guy claiming to have worked at NASA who said it's going on or whatever. That's not a reliable source. If NASA puts on their website that they believe that global warming is happening or global cooling is happening, I think that's kind of alarmist, but okay. But don't lie about what they say. Well, they really said. No, they didn't really say anything that you saw in some tabloid, sir. But anyway, let's go on. And then he says, I don't believe NASA. Well, then why are you repeating what you think NASA said? You don't think NASA said any of that. I don't believe him saying any of this. I think he's being disingenuous. Then he says, the Sunspot Solar Observatory was shut down to hide the facts, but it was supposed to be a story about... And then he invoked pedogate. Is he going to bring up Hillary Clinton's ankle next? Are we really going to go there? I'm not watching any more of his videos. And then he says, do they hack the solar flare warning systems and all the telescopes on the planet to create false flags, is what he's alluding to. No, they don't. Then they would go after all the webcams and get rid of the stupid Nibiru screenshotted lens flares or light bulbs in some cases, for crying out loud, so I wouldn't have to do debunking videos. No, they're not hacking telescopes because some telescopes don't have cameras. They're just optics. Knucklehead. So anyway, let's get on with the next one. And then he says, I always assume NASA lies. Why? Because you read tabloids saying BS about them? And he alluded to pedogate? And then he says, historians that know the past, and only the past, talk to him. I hope they're really there so we hear them too, and hope they're not imaginary. What's that got to do with anything? Historians believe that the USA is under attack by them. No, they don't. Historians will tell you it's the same old, keeps repeating, and then an average historian that you run into these days will sit back and puff on his pipe, and they get kicked out of the library. Will the sun go dark, dropping by 60% by 2030? No. And some lady making a mathematical model and apparently not getting critiqued and liking it. Or getting critiqued and not liking it. Was wrong, because this keeps getting touted every few years and it's never been right. It's never even been tested. Every 11 years does the atmosphere in your area go weird. Is it universal over the planet since the sun affects the entire planet? Or is it just one part in 1,000 and it's still not correlated to an 11-year cycle that actually really happens? I want to see a correlation. Correlation's minimum here. Mathematical model that didn't work isn't worthwhile. This doesn't make the person an expert. It makes them a failed academic. At least. And as for this guy, I don't want to watch any more of his videos. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And I hope I didn't rant too much.